Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be going over the Bitcoin miners and why they may drop lower because of Bitcoin's recent move down. So with that being said, let's get it. Okay, so a couple of things before we actually go into the miners here. So I think this is probably most important to bring up right now. We actually did cover this on the grayscale video that we just recently did. So what we're looking at here is if Bitcoin does close on the week, which again we have 4 days left on, anything could happen, right? But if it does close the week below these candle bodies here, likely Bitcoin is going to go lower. Okay, if it gets below this flag and this trend line at 57,700, we're likely going to head to somewhere between 48 to about 52,500. Again, that's kind of that channel there is roughly where the EMAs are, which means if this happens, the altcoins, the grayscale trusts, and the Bitcoin miners are likely all going to go down in price. Why is this happening? There's probably more than one reason, but I would say the main reason is because of the Mt. Gox repayments. So Mt. Gox was an exchange that went out of business a long time ago, like 10 years ago or something like that, where a lot of people lost their money in Bitcoin back then. So a lot of people that bought Bitcoin at $100, $200, $500, they're going to get their money back. And again, by the time they get their money back, maybe Bitcoin is, somewhere between 50 to 70,000 at that time. There's a chance they're going to want to sell for a profit. Okay. If you bought Bitcoin at $500 and it's sitting at $50,000, that's 100x on your money. I don't know anybody that would not want to sell that. If you bought $1,000 worth and it did 100x, you're now a millionaire. So I would have a hard time believing that most of these people would not want to sell some, if not all of their Bitcoin. So if that does happen, it could cause basically these people that are massively in profit would be looking to sell their Bitcoin to the market. Bitcoin potentially could go down as a result of that, which again, we'll be looking at critical support levels to see if that happens. And basically the crypto space could go down a little bit before I shouldn't say maybe, before most likely rallying towards the end of the year. So you guys can see the grayscale trusts are pulling back. Bitcoin and the native space is pulling back quite a bit, actually. And also the Bitcoin miners, which we're going to talk about in today's video, are also pulling back. So not all of them, but quite a bit of them. So you can see half of them are up, half of them are down. It seems like the bigger ones are down compared to the smaller ones being up, which is kind of a bit odd, but is what it is, I guess. So let's get into the technicals here. So basically, what we're looking at Mara is there's some kind of resistance here between 23 to roughly about the current price. So 21.23, you can see a lot of wicks holding the price down here, roughly about these candle tops. Once again, I would say likely a bounce area somewhere support $18.30 to about $20. You have your inverse head and shoulders target here. As you guys can see, it's not so obvious on the weekly, but you have a shoulder, a head, and a shoulder right here. The target for that is going to be all the way up at $27, which is pretty much almost at this swing high on this candle body close. Well, technically it would be these closes, I suppose, because the green ones close at the top, red ones close at the bottom. But if we were going with the green candle tops, it would be almost exactly that price. So $27 there. So the measured move we'd be looking at here would be, let's just say it gets back to the yellow EMA. That's where it bounces, roughly about 1950. Be about a 39% gain. CLSK, this one's still kind of bouncing around in this channel. It's been in this channel for what seems like ages at this point. Kind of wish we had put our cash secured puts in a little bit lower here, like maybe even started doing cash secured puts at $18, but we were still relatively new to options back then, didn't really understand the full implications of how everything works. So I would say likely the bottom of this channel is still going to hold as support. So roughly about $15 or so, $14.50, $15. This is a shooting star candle, which is generally speaking a bearish candle. Again, Bitcoin has, or I should say CLSK has one more day to trade, which is Friday because 4th of July, right? So if it confirms as a hammer candle, likely we'll probably pull back to $15 or so. Again, the top of this channel is going to be about $21, and the wick high up here, as you guys can see, which is just above resistance and also kind of sitting right around the top at that time, at the top of this kind of rising broadening wedge. is also going to be the target as well. So a lot of stuff going on there. But let's just say it does get a pullback into $15 and then swings all the way back up to 25, looking at about a 65% gain. Now you guys are probably wondering, when are these Bitcoin miners going to really start ripping? Well, they have already ripped pretty substantially since the bottom. We were buying the Grayscale Trust back here, so we didn't buy the Bitcoin miners. But I mean, truth be told, no matter what we bought back then at these lows, I mean, anything would have been a great return on investment. Crypto related, so to speak. But in terms of like really moonshotting, once again, I will say this like I've said 1,000 times. I think the Bitcoin miners are probably going to have their biggest, most explosive move when Bitcoin goes to its new all-time highs. Okay, when Bitcoin gets a candle close on the daily, the weekly, and or the monthly above 75,000, that is when I think the miners are going to start screaming to the upside. Okay, and they're going to oscillate with Bitcoin's price. They're going to go up because Bitcoin miners will oscillate with the price of Bitcoin. So that's what I suspect is going to happen. Riot, technically speaking, Riot is actually, I mean, it looks like a pretty good deal at this point. I mean, we're not that far away from all these candle lows right here, which you guys can see is right around the $9 area. Still need to get above this downtrend line, which again, we have a head, in, basically a shoulder, a head, and another shoulder. This is an inverse head and shoulders. It's not so obvious here. Like, I want to say it was not CLSK. Was it Mara? Yeah, Mara's the one where the inverse head and shoulders, you guys can see it here, is a little bit more obvious. So Riot, it's a little more obvious on the daily, but we got a shoulder, head, shoulder, and then kind of multiple shoulders over here. But anyways, the target, let's just say move the target over here. Maybe the breakout is maybe in the next couple of weeks because of the spot Ether ETFs, maybe. Roughly about $15 on Riot. Again, that's a huge move. Although I will reiterate once again, if Bitcoin does drop substantially, like let's say Bitcoin goes from where it currently is at 60,000 down to like 50 or 40,000, likely we're probably going to see Riot retest the bottom of this channel, which again is roughly going to be about just shy of $8. So I would say let's just do two targets here. So basically from the bottom of these candle body lows at about $9 to that inverse head and shoulders target, about a 67% move. If Bitcoin does dump off a cliff, likely it retests the bottom of the support, and then the move to the inverse head and shoulders target would be about an 89% move, so still pretty good. HUD-8, this thing just keeps on screaming higher. I thought maybe after last week with this big wick to the upside, which is a bearish signal, likely it was going to pull back some. That did not happen. I mean, this is a pretty fat green candle. It's bigger than these previous ones with a massive volume bar, as you guys can see here, so not really surprised that it's moving higher. But if Bitcoin is going to drop, it could put out the fire a little bit, so to speak, on HUD-8. But if we get a close above these candle bodies right here, which we did not get last week, if we get that this week, then likely it's going to head up to at least, I would say, the bottom of this resistance at 1750. That's where a candle closes back here, as you guys can see. And then the wick high is just above the top of resistance at $23. So you could be looking at anything from 7% to 41%. I'd be going more for the 41% if it was me. Because again, if it does get above this $15 close here, I mean, this could be a stopping point, but I would say the next major swing high would be the stopping point. So somewhere between 21 to 23, because you can see how substantial these peaks are. In terms of buying this, there's only two ways I would approach this. Either we get a pullback into the EMAs and I'd be looking to buy a spot off the market, or basically do some kind of cash secured put on a pullback when it's not so close to this resistance. Maybe it gets down to, let's say, I don't know. Let's just say it gets down to $15 again, and then I want to do some kind of cash secured put super low at maybe like 12 or something like that. Then I would potentially be looking to take a position at that point. So Cipher, once again, I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. You can see all these wick rejections here on this resistance. Cipher will likely run heavy with Bitcoin when Bitcoin goes to new all-time highs, which I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say my prediction is somewhere between November, December of this year, when Bitcoin smashes past 75,000. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. Okay. But in terms of all these rejections and the fact that we are getting very close to kind of that bear zone again, I just simply would not touch this, because the downside risk here is if it goes back down to support like it did almost every other time that it did, that'd be a 54% drop. The only saving grace here is that this trend line has been held. So last time it hit this bear zone up here, it did actually get bought up at the EMAs instead of going back down to support, and also here somewhat. So this could be an ascending triangle, could break out. If it does break out, then the target would be something like, let's say it maybe happens, I don't know, all the way over here in maybe October or something, because again, Bitcoin theoretically shouldn't break out until roughly about the end of the year. That's the way the cycles go. You guys can see it would hit $9, so just shy of this previous resistance here. There is actually a candle close relatively close to that level, so there's that. But in terms of buying immediately, I would not buy immediately. I would probably put in a cash secured put, or at least maybe wait for it to get down to this trend line to maybe start DCAing in. That's just me. So the trend line as of current is going to be about 385. The swing high is up here at 590 or so. So if for some reason on Friday this thing just tanks down to the trend line, you guys got your entry target there, and the swing high up there would be 50%. Again, that you guys can buy this whenever you want to. I'm just telling you guys how I would see this. So $2 to roughly about 265 at that macro support way down here, which is not quite the bear market lows. You can see the bear market lows was in the pennies, but it's the next major level of support. So btbt, I think this one's already had its move. I would be waiting for some kind of pullback, maybe into the EMAs at about 260 to 280, somewhere in there. If we get a pullback, which could happen with Bitcoin dumping, I mean, it could be as much as 20%. You guys can go about that how you want. I wouldn't trade options on this because, again, the premiums for btbt are not that great. The best options, the best miners for selling options on, in my opinion, are going to be those top four there. So Mara, CLSK, Riot, and HUD8. So from the EMAs, assuming we get a swing back to this previous wick high, which is 370, that'd be about 40%. Now, if we get all the way up to this wick high at 530, that would obviously be much more substantial. So you'd then be looking at nearly about 103% move on this one. So bitf, this thing's just kind of bobbing around. It's stuck in no man's land at this point, not at resistance, not at support. I would be at least waiting for a pullback into support. You do have this kind of hammer candle formation here. You can see this very clear hammer candle rejection from the bears saying, nope, we're not going to let this thing run up. And it closed just right below this resistance almost perfectly. It's like textbook perfect. And then it went down. So it's at the EMAs, but it could even go lower to this red EMA. That's possible at 208. It could even go all the way down to this trend line, ranging from roughly about $1.50 to, I'd say, $1.60, looking, a couple months out. So let's just say it hits the bottom of support and you want to ride it back to that previous wick. That's 67% move. Again, that support is going to be around $2 up to 330, and then up to the previous wick high, roughly about 100% at 390 per share. Okay, so last thing I want to show you guys here is we did actually get rid of Mara. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see it, but Mara was sitting somewhere in here. I don't remember exactly where, but it's not here anymore. So pretty much what we did was, as soon as we saw Bitcoin was looking like it was going to capitulate, we got out of Mara. Mostly relatively break even, all things considered. Cost a little bit of money to close the sell call, but then we made about $120, $130 in profit or something like that on the actual shares. So more or less break even. We'll go over the numbers in a later date, but we don't have it anymore. So what do we do with the money? Well, pretty much what we did is, let's see here. So I'll go down the list here. So we bought some NVIDIA. We bought some more NVIDIA because, as you guys know, the declaration just happened for the YieldMax ETFs. The X date is on Friday. So by the time you guys see this video, it will be the X date. We bought some more MSTY. These both pay over $2 a share. MSTY is a crypto play. We basically evened out our SoFi positions, so added up to 600 shares for another basically cover call. Same thing with Palantir, bought another 100 shares of Palantir, did another covered call on that as well. We have a reason for wanting to buy these growth stocks. We'll talk about that in a later video, but we also got some YMAG because once the single stocks pay out, then the next X date after that would be the Yield Max fund of funds, which this is one of them. And we also added 5 shares to AIPI because its first dividend payment is coming up this month. And then we bought 10 shares of NVIDIA, the actual NVIDIA stock, not just NVIDIA. Because again, NVIDIA has had an extremely rare pullback. So if I actually go to the chart of NVIDIA here, you guys can see what I'm talking about. So the last time that we had any kind of pullback was in May. That was so a month before this most recent pullback, and you guys can see we're already pumping. Before that, it was basically 2 months before that was a pullback, and then before that, it didn't even pull back at all since last year. So these dip buying opportunities are on NVIDIA are extremely rare, so we wanted to pick up some shares on the dip. If it dips again, we will pick up some more because we understand just how rare it is. So anyways, this is the Bitcoin miners update. Just keep in mind, if Bitcoin does drop to 50, 40K, which is possible, it happened in the middle of 2021 between the peaks, the Bitcoin miners and everything else crypto related could pull back, okay, before we see the true cycle peak come up towards the end of the year, towards the end of this year to the end of next year. So anyways, hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.